should say, g'day Pete, welcome to my house.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's been a tough week for us.
Absolutely.
A tough week for blokes right around the country.
Absolutely.
You've been walking pretty closely with Watto, and so then it was in one sense no surprise when Thursday said he was pretty low.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been that no surprise, but still a shock.
Yeah, and the guys at Marumba Down asked me to be there last Monday, but it didn't work out. But I wanted to record something of you and me having a chat to help blokes right around the country, because we know a lot of blokes have been touched by Watto's life, and we've certainly touched about his passing.
Absolutely, Peter. I think something that I pondered a bit, particularly the last week. People have said, we play a particular part, and Ian had a gift. I reckon there's 1,000 blokes in this country that every one of them felt like they were very special in Ian's eyes, and very close, and he had that beautiful gift to make everybody feel like a champion everywhere he went.
Yeah, I was reflecting on that, same thought over the last couple of days. When he wrote every bloke's a champion ever knew, and he actually made everybody feel like they're a champion, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's in some way I think I've reflected in that, and that's a beautiful thing. In other ways, it's made it very difficult now for the family, because everybody wants a part of them, and certainly be a part of Ian's life, and that as good as it has been, that's been a difficult thing, and I think today will be a good opportunity to tease some of that out.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things for the purpose of this, for the blokes watching this online, is one, to just be part of our conversation, but two, to raise the issue of grief, and how do we as blokes deal with grief, or maybe we should say how we don't deal with
don't deal with grief,
and what are some suggestions. So, but let's kick off with how long you known Watto for?
Oh gosh, Peter, probably 14 years. I reckon. I was thinking about that just recently when we celebrated Ian and Margaret's birthday. I was at a men's dinner, and Ian sat across from me. I'd met him before that, but we really connected at that dinner, sitting across the table. I think Brendan was there, and my son James was there, and he invited me to come to shed night, and that was life changing for me. That would have been 14 years ago. What about for yourself?
Yeah,
you go back a lot longer than that.
Yeah, it's 20 plus years. I actually met Watto through Margaret, because Margaret was enrolled at Christian Heritage College doing a counselling course, and I was actually her lecturer.
Yeah.
And through her, she got me invited to speak at a breakfast at her church, and that's where I met Ian. And
he's told me about that. He said this guy rocked up in a Lions shirt and very informal.
Yeah.
He was wrapped. He was
I had shorts, sandals, and a Lions shirt, and that grabbed him. But from that day on, Watto called me the man teacher.
The man teacher. Yeah.
And so there's a long history there. And
it's amazing, and I would imagine that every bloke that probably listens to this will have a little part of how they met, and this history, and how Ian made them feel very special, and was genuinely interested and compassionate on every bloke's story. And I hadn't, up until that meeting Ian, I hadn't ever had anybody I would class as a mentor, or somebody that cared enough about me or believed in me. And I think that would be fairly similar for many of the blokes around the country. Probably the first bloke that ever really believed that they could actually be something or somebody.
Yeah. And I think it's important as we talk, is that for the guys watching this, is that reflecting on the connection is part of the grief process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that Dr. Judith Murray says that when somebody dies, our relationship with them doesn't end. It changes.
I hadn't contemplated that. Yeah, it definitely changes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we think it's a finish, but it's a new beginning.
And Judith is a professor in psychology at University of Queensland, a lovely Christian lady who specialises in grief and loss. And so, and she says that also that the story that you had, the love that you have, is that your grief is proportional to that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And so
the depth of connection will have
great grief.
Great grief.
So I often talk about a pendulum.
Yeah.
And so I talk about on one side is love and one side is pain. And I go, there's not good feelings and bad feelings. There's good feelings, love, and there's unpleasant feelings, which is pain. And so the degree that you love is that we're going to have experienced the degree of the pain. And
so the pendulum swings
way back,
both ways.
and that's not abnormal. And I know that as we've talked over the last couple of days, there's been some tears between us. And,
Absolutely.
And a lot of just confusion and hurt and emotional exhaustion. And in one sense, that's normal. That's okay.
I listened to some material you presented recently, Peter, and one of the things that struck me in some of the words you said was, we haven't been created to understand death, and that's why it's so difficult.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that? Because that's the first time I've really understood or heard that, and it really has been profound for me to think, well...
Yeah, and that's been part of my own journey of discovering grief. And so I looked at Genesis 1 and 2 before the fall, and we're created for relationship, we're created for connection, we're created for life. And it was good.
It was good.
And hence the heart of Shed and you know, Watto and Chad Polinsky told a story about wanting more from guys, wanting to connect, rather than just turning up to an event, hearing some bloke talk and then go home and doing nothing about it. And so therefore we're wired for that connection. But post Genesis 3, when the fall happened, is that death enters in, broken relationships entered in, so relationship with God was broken, relationship with one another was broken, relationship with Eden was broken.
Yeah.
And so therefore as now we experience brokenness, we experience death as normal, but it's actually abnormal
to the way we were created.
To the way we're created. And that's really helpful for me because I find grief terribly confusing.
Yeah.
I say to clients all the time, Wayne, I say, you know, in your head, you'll have a million thoughts like, why, if only, what if I did this, why didn't I do that? And I say, there's no answers to that. And yet in my own grief journey, I do exactly the same, a gazillion times.
So there's no really wrong question to ask. And I guess it would be correct then to say, whatever the emotion you're feeling in this grief, be honest and share it and try and tease it out.
Yeah.
It's a bit like you have this emotion and it's confusing, but it's a great way to actually get to the other side and what's the process. If you shut down and you say nothing, it's hard to process.
One of our very first shed nights at Red Shed, it was April, it was just before Easter.
Yeah.
And Timmy Thomas, returned serviceman, ex-commando.
Yeah, beautiful bloke.
Yeah, we interviewed Tim, and Tim was talking about his PTSD, and he said something that stayed with me, you know, would be 5 years ago, if not more, 6 years ago. And he said, processing post-traumatic grief, or post-traumatic loss, I should say, or post-traumatic trauma, he said there's only three things. He said there's tears, there's talk, and there's time.
Yeah. And
I think that's the same with grief. I think it's about tears, whether we do that privately or publicly. There are tears. I think talking is really important, and I think time. And I remember one of my professors saying grief is like a wave. You know, growing up on the Gold Coast, you get these big sets come through sometimes, and they turn you upside down, and you don't know which way's up, and you find your feet only to get smacked by another wave.
Yeah.
And then there's, after the set's gone, it settles down a bit. And my professor said that grief is like that, and he said it never goes away. It just the waves get smaller and further apart with more time.
Yeah.
And I think that if I think about other griefs in my life, griefs that go back 20 years, 30 years, that's been true, is that I still have moments where I get hit by a wave, but it doesn't bowl me over.
Yeah, you're not getting ground into the bottom anymore.
No, and I think that in light of the last few days, I said to Nerily last night, I came inside and she said, how are you? And I said, I'm really tired. I'm really exhausted. And I said, but I think it's just all the grief.
It's physical and emotional grief. It's wearing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. There was like so ringing on the inside, and and I was working on my caravan, and my head was just going over stuff with Ian and shared, and then blokes would pop into my head, and so your brain's zipping along pretty fast, and it's exhausting.
Peter, a lot of people would say you're a relationship counsellor, and your understanding of how we think and people do stuff is profound, and yet it's beautiful. I think that's one of the reasons I love to call you my friend, is that you are honest and you are able to deal with this stuff openly and honestly, and say, I struggle with some of this stuff. It's not like just a 1 and 1 is 2 type answer. It's quite profound.
And in one sense, what I would want us not to be sad.
Yeah. Well, part of me is terribly sad.
Yeah, and I think
the other part is terribly, I'm so joyful, thinking, well, I can't imagine the conversations he's having with Almighty God.
Yeah, which is great for him.
Yeah,
sucks for us.
It sucks for us. I was thinking about you mentioned a few guys, Tim Thomas and Chad and Chad Blinsky, and the amount of people I think we called Ian at one stage the professor of connection.
Yeah,
he had an ability to, wherever we went, he would connect people. And I've tried to adopt a bit of that. I don't think I'll ever be Ian Watson connector, but I'm giving a crack at it.
Nobody will. There's only one Ian Watson, and there should only be one.
Yeah, but the amount of people that we've met through Shed that we would never, I can't, there would be no other way I could have connected, and you too, better blokes down in South Australia, over in Perth with Paul Morrison and all the boys from over there, Mackay, Frank Cowell and all the boys from up there, Townsville, all around the country that we've been able to get and connect with these fellas. And when we've had those big Shed events, and better blokes, the thing for me, and I guess for you and for many of us that will probably watch this, their relationships, even though we might be 1,000 k's apart, they're deep. In this last couple of days, I've never had my battery on my phone run out twice in a day, with people just wanting to go, can you tell me something? Is it really true? How are you going? Checking up on me. How are you going?
Yeah.
And then checking up on them. That has been just so good to actually help the grieving process to talk it out.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I'd say is a suggestion to blokes: if some guy gets on your mind or your heart,
Ring them.
And so yesterday, I Timmy Nagel, Timbo was in my brain.
Yeah.
And I just stopped what I did, and I rang him, and I left a message, and I went back to what I was doing. About 30 minutes later, he rang me back, and it was like, I just wanted to check in on him, and Timbo said, I've lost my best mate.
Right. Yeah.
And but he said it's bittersweet, and he thanked me, and he said lots of guys have been checking in on him, and he said, isn't that Shed?
Yes. See, I had a privilege to. Neil Johnson rang me up from Vision Radio on Friday and asked if I'd say a few words about Ian, said it was the day after, and he asked me my perspective on Shed, and sadly I think people have looked at it as a program.
Yeah.
But it isn't. It is exactly that. Do I care enough? Ian cared enough about so many people to want to be involved. I can't, Margaret may know, but there must be thousands of blokes. He would have phone calls. Every time you saw Ian, there was a text message. He'd say, I got this text from this bloke. He got my book from somewhere, and it's made a difference in his life. The amount of conversations we're having where people are saying, I don't know where my marriage would be if Ian and Margaret hadn't interjected and told me some things that I probably didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear.
Yeah.
Those conversations the last few days have just overwhelmed me. Like, I've just been thinking. So I can't imagine how Margaret and the boys are feeling in thinking, they gave a lot to let Ian do that.
Yeah.
They gave up, particularly I think the boys gave a lot of their dad away. And so that we could have that little part.
Yeah.
But it fired him up. I remember recently just going over there to do a little bit of a job for him, and he said, grab a few guys and we'll have morning tea. There was 15 people sitting in Margaret's house having morning tea, all blokes. And she was overwhelmed. She took off, and Ian, when we got there, was a bit of a mess. He was pretty tired. Well, we were there. I had to go and do some work again, so we were there for probably an hour and a half, and he was still going, and he was firing up. By the time we left, he was probably so exhausted, and yet you wouldn't pick it. And I think for me, that was one of the hard things. I heard people in the last 12 months say, is Ian really sick? And I can't imagine how Ian would have felt if he'd have heard that, because I mean, he had a brave face, he put on some stuff, but his personality fired up around people.
Yeah. And those close to him, Shed Blokes were close to him, knew he was sick.
Yeah, well,
We
look,
saw that.
I used to sit there and think, how do I protect you? You know, and he'd say, I'll come over and do that. I say, mate, you need to rest. You need to spend some time with the family. You know, but he just loved people so much. And I guess for me, as a mentor, you know, I've asked myself that question, you know, do I really love people that much? And he's taught me that, you know, that's the important thing.
Yeah. Just as you're reflecting there, see, part of the grief process is reflecting. Grief in itself is about adjusting to a loss.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're not hardwired for it, but our brain and our heart is wrestling with, Ian's not here anymore.
Yeah.
I've got this hole in my heart. I've got this loss. Professor Judith Murray says the grief journey is about finding the space, the tolerable space in your heart,
yeah,
where you can honour the loss.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, as the early days of grief, and you know, we had dinner on Friday night and shared some stories, and those stories bring tears because the loss is so acute. As time goes on, some of those stories will bring laughter and joy, because the loss is just so confronting. It's in our face. And so, in one sense, I want to say to Blokes is that it's okay to reflect. It's okay to tell stories, because that's part of the process. And
it's almost imperative.
It is. And some blokes will do that on their own way. That, you know, some blokes in the country might be doing it while they're sitting on a tractor.
Yeah.
You know, in their own head. And others, more like you as an extrovert, need to talk it out.
Yeah.
But part of the grief journey is about reflecting, but it's bittersweet. It's as we reflect, our hearts know that he's not here, and that hurts. And that's why grief is a tricky thing at times. Yeah. And there's no formula for it, because it's different for different people. There are stages that we sort of go through, ebbs and flows. But really it's about wrestling with someone we love is no longer here, and our relationship is changing.
In talking to Tim and many other guys that have spent a lot of time with Ian, because of their, I guess, they're geographically close.
Yeah.
That loss, where do I go now? And I think that for me, the question has come up: who's going to run Shed?
Yeah.
And I've contemplated that. So I remember sitting there that day where we had morning tea, and Ian was sort of saying, you need to get a flyer out and promote yourself and go and speak to people. And I said, Ian, we can't do that. We can't be you, but we can be what God wants us to be. And I wanted to encourage every bloke that's listening to this. You know, God's planted a seed in us through Ian of how to do this. To have those conversations, even if you're ordering a coffee at the Lions Club. And our legacy, or his legacy, will be what we're going to do with that. Are we going to be able to have those tough conversations? Will we care enough to go, look, I'm not trying to tell you how to do life, but from the outside, I'm watching some of this stuff and it's not healthy. Yeah. You need to change how you're viewing the situation. Now that takes courage to do that, but without the care and compassion and love, it's not worth a cracker, I don't think. Yeah. That's one thing I've learned.
And I think that, I know some people have said, you know, you're Watto's right-hand man, and I know you don't like that, and I think that we don't, for the Shed Happens movement, I don't think we need to replace
that's the last thing we need is a replacement.
No, we just need to honour his legacy and
encourage each other
and learn.
Those phone calls. How are you going? I got Bowser the other day. How are you going, mate? You going all right down there? Timmy Nagorka down south. And look, the names just keep going. You know, checking up. And I think that's the imperative part. These guys run and shed all around their country. It's a lonely place at the top. You know what it's like. I know what it's like now. You know, it can be quite daunting and draining. we need to make sure, and whether you're leading a shed or you're not leading a shed, just check up on each other. And it's not like this is how you're going today, mate, day. It's every day.
Yeah.
Like you said, when those names come to your mind.
Yeah.
Give a bloke a text or a call.
And that's a good point. I think that the passing of Watto gives us an opportunity to practice shed day to day.
Pick up the banner.
And to go, how do I connect? How do I care?
Use your gifts. The gifts that each of us have.
Which was Watto's heartbeat. And so we don't need to panic. And some blokes are going to struggle. Some blokes are going to really, really struggle. And some will process it easier. Grief is such a complex thing that I've struggled in grief at times, and I had to seek professional help. And it was only one session, but it actually helped me to
sieve it out a bit,
put the pieces of the puzzle in the right place. And I walked out, and I said, that made so much sense. And I sat in my car and I sobbed for 20 minutes. Yeah. But it was good because I knew what I was sobbing about.
Knowing how to process it. And I think, like, you've had a double whammy this week.
Yeah.
Do you want to just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of my young, I guess, guys I mentor professionally.
Yeah.
And he's been to our shed, just started coming to his shed. And so on Tuesday, his wife was told, or they were told, that they were losing their baby, or their baby had died, well, over halfway through the pregnancy.
So she hadn't conceived yet. I mean, she conceived, but hasn't been born.
Hasn't been born. And so then they put her in hospital to induce her. And then...
now let me get the handle on this, because you have to induce the baby because the baby's dead.
Yep.
Now this is going to hit a nerve with a lot of fellas, because they're not the first people to have lost a baby.
Yep.
But for you to get that information on the top of Ian...
Yeah, so what happened Friday morning, I just texted, his name's John, and John, how you going, mate? What's the situation? Because I knew that they'd lost the baby. I knew that she was being induced. And he said that his wife had given birth to their son on Thursday night. So I shot straight back, because one of the things I know with grief and loss, particularly grief and loss of children, is that we don't talk about it. So I just said, what's your son's name? And it came back, Reuben Joseph. And so I just sent a little prayer, acknowledging Reuben Joseph to his mum, his dad, his big sister Ella. So that was on the back of Ian dying Thursday afternoon. And, and again, this is a guy, he was a student of mine, I mentor him, I work with him as a
close
colleague.
Relationship.
And
feel his pain.
Yeah, and my daughter is a bit further along in her pregnancy. She's 31, 32 weeks.
But still,
so it's there. But it just came out of me doing what I do. I wanted to check for him. So for me, there's been a double whammy. It's like two sets of tidal waves whacking me around.
The reason I wanted to ask you that, Peter, is when we talked about this on Friday night, you made a very good point of addressing the issue. Often people get to a place where we don't know how to confront something, so we do nothing.
Yeah.
And they think that's okay. Doing nothing is still doing something.
Yes, it is.
But to actually put name to it, to this little boy, and to what's the word? Acknowledge and honour.
Yeah.
This little boy.
This was a life.
It's beginning of healing for mum and dad.
This was a life, and they lost their son.
So the more they are able to, I would imagine it will be difficult, because not everybody's going to be able to feel comfortable going up, "G'day, John." I had heard, having that conversation is difficult, but for everybody it's healing, because you can get it out in the open. They don't have to hide behind it. Yeah. Everybody can sort of process it.
So if we come back to Timmy Thomas, tears, talk and time, and if we hold that as a base for the journey of grief, is that, it is a double whammy. And so that's why I was so exhausted yesterday. I mean, I was very busy yesterday doing manual stuff, but that's what didn't exhaust me. It was actually the emotional stuff of just my head spinning about John, my head spinning about Margaret and Hayden and Brendan and Luke and their wives and their kids. So my mind was buzzing, and then thinking about you and the guys who are, you know, up here in Queensland because we've got close proximity.
Yeah.
So yeah, my mind's been buzzy, but that's okay. I tell myself that's okay. This is grief. This is what grief does. And
so you allow yourself permission
to go with
be
the
emotional
journey.
with the thing.
And I think the worst thing would be to just sort of pretend it's not there and shove it down.
I'm okay. We've talked in Shed before about being stoic. I remember a great interview that, I can't remember who did it, might have been Ian over at Murrumba Downs one Monday night at Shed over there. And a guy was talking about how he was brought up to be stoic.
Yeah.
And as men, we find that we've seen that as an admirable, what's the word? Admirable character.
Yeah.
And now I see it as a flaw.
Yeah.
Because we try to be something, but we can't fool ourselves.
Yeah.
We can try and fool everybody else about this being stoic.
Yeah.
But the truth is, underneath, if we're bubbling, underneath and hurting, we need to be able to acknowledge that.
Yeah. Just pause there. I just want to check this is still going all right. Yep, it's going good. I can edit that out.
Oh yeah.
Okay. When you trigger a thought for me, I do this practical teaching, demonstration, and because you know that's what blokes relate to.
Yeah.
And I get 3 pieces of rod about that long. So one is 6 mil old 1/4 inch galvanised steel.
We're that age where we know both.
We know both.
Imperial and yeah,
and then a piece of dowel about the same, and then I've got a piece of rubber that's about 10 mil. And I get 3 volunteers up, and I hold up the steel and I say, "Steel's strong, isn't it?" And everyone goes, "Yeah." And I give it to a bloke and I say, "I want you to bend it at right angles."
Oh, so 1/4 inch steel, you could do that.
Bend that. And I say, "Now put it back to shape."
Never goes back to
And
shape.
never goes back to shape. Flat out bending it back.
Yeah.
Then I give the next one a piece of dowel and I say, "Bend it at right angles." And obviously it goes snap. And I go, "Now put it back." And you sort of stick it back, and as soon as you let go, it falls off.
Yeah.
And then I give the piece of rubber and I say, "Now bend it at right angles." Now let it go back. You just take your hand off, it just bounces back.
Yeah.
And the point is that stoic is like being steel. Somehow I've got to be strong.
We're tough.
But the problem is that we get bent out of shape, and we get bent out of shape on the inside, and we might be stoic on the outside, but we don't bounce back.
Because it comes out in all the wrong places.
It comes out.
Yeah.
Some people are like the dowel, you know, they're brittle and they crack and they break easily.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to repair.
Yeah.
Resilience, from a mental health perspective, is the capacity to take the hit and bounce back. Now that's what grief's about. Taking the hit, bouncing back.
So it's something we, from our early conversation, it's not something we're born with, but it's something we can learn. It's this resilience. We can learn this resilience. Yeah. And it comes through, basically what we're doing in Shed is getting guys to talk out their story honestly about how they're feeling emotionally and just their life story.
Yeah.
And you know, it's something that I guess in confession, we've always thought confession is sin, but I'm seeing it more now that it's confess your story. Own up to what you have, but don't own it. Hand it over to God who does what he needs to do with it.
Well,
gives you the resilience.
Let's use a WATTO phrase: spill your guts.
Yeah, and be healed.
Spill your guts.
Yeah.
You're going to feel a lot cleaner, and you'll be healed. That's no different with grief.
Yeah.
If you're hurting about the loss of WATTO, spill your guts about it to someone you trust.
So on the other hand to this, we've been able to have these pretty brutal conversations over the last few days because we trust each other, we love each other. When you do spill your guts with somebody, and then and I guess this is as much for how do we react to somebody else that is in grief, to say, well, you shouldn't feel like that, or you need to do this, or very unhelpful.
He's in a better place.
Yeah, I mean, flippantly going, what are you worried about? You're stupid.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, is that it's great for WATTO to have those conversations, but it sucks for us.
Yeah.
And so those sort of flippant things are ways that some people feel uncomfortable or distressed, and so their way of coping is to give a cliche,
push it away,
so they don't have to face it. And it's about their discomfort.
Yeah.
And so I think that finding the blokes, and so we'll talk about what blokes do if they're struggling. I think the first thing is that if you're listening to this, you're probably a shed man.
Yeah.
Talk about it with your shed man.
Yeah.
Talk about
because
it
they probably need it too, and they may not know how to do it.
Yeah, and we know most sheds are finished until February, most likely. Pick up the phone and talk to one of the blokes in your shed.
Yeah.
Don't suffer in silence.
Yeah.
Pick up and talk about it and start the conversation, and that, you know what? We need to shed tears right around our country.
Yeah.
This is a huge loss.
It is a massive loss.
And we need to shed tears, and it's okay. You know, we're better men for it.
Yeah. One of the healing things that I've seen on some of the emails and things that I've received from blokes, and no doubt Margaret will be getting these too, but I know the guys from Kingaroy just sent an email out, and they had this beautiful picture that they'd taken of Ian and Margaret over the waterfall up at Kingaroy. And I got it, and I suddenly looked at it this morning, and I had the privilege to do a couple of Kingaroy trips with Ian and Margaret and Julie, and just brought so many good memories.
Yeah.
So to encourage the guys, you know, if you've got a photo, maybe just talk about it, you know, or you know, a photo of Ian and Margaret or something. I remember we got one there, Bowie Hall up at Kingaroy. They have a service up there after we've been there for shed, and this Bowie Hall, and here we are standing under Bowie Hall sign, and it's the most funny photo with this Bowie Hall, but just they're the memories that help you, and they will bring emotion.
Oh, they will. I shared with you on Friday that I was scrolling through some messages, and the last time that I caught up face to face with Watto was that you and Julie and Nerily and I and Margaret and Ian went out for dinner. And I don't know who took the photos of the night, but they were messaged.
Yeah.
And I just scrolled through those messages. I just burst into tears. I was like, it was such a great night.
Yeah.
It was so good connecting. But see, that made me acutely aware of the loss.
Yeah.
And so I was sitting there, Nerily came and said, "You okay?" And I said, "Look what I came across."
Yeah.
And she just put her arm around me. And one of the things that Nerily and I understand is that my grief response is pretty instantaneous. I get really emotional.
Pretty quick.
I get overwhelmed really quickly. For her process is different. It can take a day or so for her.
Yeah.
And so it was
So you're kind of almost coming out of it when she's coming into it.
Yeah,
in some cases.
And Friday afternoon she was in the car driving back from the hairdresser.
Copped it.
And that's when it hit her.
Yeah.
So both losses.
So allowing each other the space, recognising that space.
And being kind to one another, going, we all do it differently, but let's just have the space to do that, where it's like, yeah, remember this. And I was thinking earlier today, of one of my favourite photos with Watto at Better Blokes, and I had my Lions scarf and he had his Carlton Boys scarf.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that earlier, and I was thinking, wow, I can't get a photo like that again.
Yeah.
You know, because he's gone. And that's the journey of grief.
On the flip side to that a little bit, what a blessing it is for Ian to have written those books and put them in audio. I remember listening to Every Bloke's a Champion. I'd read the book, and then I managed to get a copy of the audio, and fed him. It was like I was sitting there having a cup. He starts it off, I think, let's sit down and put the kettle on and have a tea. And forever I'll be listening to those times where I miss it.
Yeah.
It was just such a natural conversation that's on the CD. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I wish we could all do that.
And mate, I was thinking about that yesterday too. I thought jumped in my head, I won't hear Watto's voice ever again. And I said, no, I'll hear his voice. You know, got his audio books and his radio stuff. But I won't have the conversation.
Yeah.
And so as part of my thinking too, my last conversation with him was a Sunday night, and he rang, and I was marking uni stuff, and I picked up, and he goes, "PJ, I didn't expect you to answer. I was just going to leave a message."
Yeah.
But I just knew I needed to, and so I cherish that conversation.
Yeah.
Because you don't know when the next one's going to be, and that's why the what ifs, the if onlys.
Yeah.
So there's some blokes going, if I only just got up there, or you know, that's a normal process.
So there's probably an opportunity for people to feel like they missed out on something.
Yeah.
But I remember having a conversation with Ian and Margaret, in the last few months, and I asked them the question: what's better to have this process, which has taken 17 years in reality, and the last probably 6 months has been really difficult, or to go out and get hit by a bus?
Yeah.
And Margaret said, "Look, this is really hard because every conversation we have, when Ian and Luke and Soshon and I can't remember his granddaughter's name now, it's gone out of my head, when they went back overseas, we had a conversation shortly after that, and Ian was just so cut because he's thinking, I'm probably never going to see him again.
I remember him saying to me,
every conversation that he had the last 6 months was like, this could be my last conversation.
My last conversation.
That's hard.
And the truth is,
for all of us, it could be like that.
Yeah, that's what grief is.
Yeah.
You never know when your last conversation is going to be, generally, and unless somebody's dying, of older age, or you're a family member who's there waiting, like it's the family's right. But for many of us, there will be those what ifs, if onlys going on, and I want to say that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
And that'll settle with time.
And there's no point bashing yourself up over it. You've got to go, well, it is what it is.
Yeah. And just be kind to yourself and go, that's the grief process.
Take what we have, be thankful for what we've got and the time we've had.
Yeah.
And I seriously, in a conversation yesterday afternoon with one of our guys, how blessed are we to have had an opportunity to have this man invest into so many people in our country and believe that things can be better, and really instill in us the hope that if we actually start being men and what it means to be a real fair dinkum man, we don't no longer have to have the conversations about what's wrong with our country. Instead, we'll be looking at what's right and how can we actually change this stuff, rather than what we seem to have adopted as an Australian male attitude now is like we just whinge about everything.
Yeah.
And Ian had an ability, and I have a bit of whinge every now and about something, he'd go, you got to actually look at it different. So fellas, if we're going to get stuck in that bog hole, we've got to look at it different. Yeah.
In counselling, when we talk about grief, we say the period of adjustment of significant bereavement loss is 2 to 5 years. Okay. So in the scheme of it, that's a long time. It is, and what generally happens is that by 6 weeks, everybody's life's moved on except for the people who are the closest. Yeah. And then most people think by 6 months, aren't you over it yet? Yeah. And that's, I've heard so many people have lost people close and they cop that, and it hurts so much. And I go, let's take John and his wife. They should never get over the loss of their son. Yeah, absolutely. Margaret will spend the rest of her life adjusting. This was the man that she met as a teenager, the man of her life. Yeah. There's no getting over it. It's about adjusting to it, and we know that it's 2 to 5 years, and the first year is always the hardest because the first. And so I said to Nerily today, I said, I wasn't planning going to Better Blokes, but I think I had a sense I need to be there because it's the first Better Blokes without Watto. Yeah. And so the first, so you have all these firsts that make the loss more acute, and that's why the first year is always the hardest. Yeah. Imagine one of the conversations I had recently is, it's a lousy time to die just before Christmas. I don't think there's ever a good time. There's no good time. I don't think there's ever a good time. No. However, it made me ponder the idea of, what a celebration we have at Christmas about, God's plan of salvation for us in Jesus. And that was Ian's message, really, the whole time was, get your eyes off of us and get your eyes onto the bloke that created you. Yeah. And I'm thinking, no, this is a very appropriate time. It is. Because in this Advent part of the come up to Christmas, preparing for a creator that loves us so much, Ian was so much an encourager of that. And I was thinking about this, Wayne, that Isaiah said, a few hundred years before Jesus came, he said, Jesus is a man or the servant was acquainted with grief and sorrow. And I've thought about this the last couple of days, that the King of Kings, the Son of the Creator, is acquainted with grief and sorrow.
Yeah.
The story with Jesus and Lazarus.
Yeah.
And so blokes, you know, if you're a believer, open the old book at John and go to John 11 and start at verse 1 and just follow through, and you'll find that what happens is they come to Jesus and say, Lazarus is sick. And Jesus says, this only won't end in death.
Yeah.
And then they say, Jesus says he's asleep. And his disciples think he's asleep. And he sort of looks at them and says, listen, thickheads, he's dead.
He's dead.
And then he says, but it's not going to stay that way. And then he gets there, and Mary and Martha, one of them, meet him and said, if you weren't here, he wouldn't die. And Jesus said, well, do you believe that he can come back to life? She said, yeah. So here, on 4 occasions, he's really clear about what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So he knows what the next move is. And then the shortest verse in the Bible is John 11:35, where Jesus stands outside Lazarus' tomb and weeps.
Yeah.
And theologians have said, oh, well, you know, he was going to die again or whatever. And I'm going, let's cut the crap. Lazarus was one of Jesus' best mates. And his best mate was dead.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter that he knew the next move. It still hurt.
It still hurt.
And so what I say is that Jesus is a man acquainted with grief and sorrow. And so as we come to the Advent, is that, you know, Advent exists as the lead into Easter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, you know, I've heard many messages over the years as we come up that, you know, you can't separate the two.
You can't.
They're both one and it's the same. Something about this whole, you know, people don't want to talk about death, and I guess it's been something I've learned to deal with after working in aged care for a long time and having that weekly people passing away. Yeah. So it doesn't have the shock. This is not a surprise to God. No. It shouldn't be a surprise to us, because from the day we're born, death is inevitable. Yep. And yet we come back to our original conversation of we still struggle to process this. And I think for me it's been easy because I've had to talk a lot about this in my life, losing close family early in my life, and then working in that where people don't always deal with death well. Yeah. I've had to talk about it a lot because I'd go nuts if I didn't, and to be able to process that.
And we're a culture that likes to push it to the side and not talk about it, not think about it. Whereas in fact,
that's what gives us the resilience.
We need to talk about it. We need to think about it. Well, I just want to suggest a few things. So if there's some blokes who are really struggling, because there could be a few blokes who just, you know,
just can't process it.
Or there's other things in their life and they tip into anxiety or depression or something else. Is that talk to someone, but if you can't find someone to talk to, Lifeline is always available.
Yeah, me too.
13 11 14 is the Lifeline number. Men's helpline, which is designed for Aussie blokes, is 1300 789978. So 1300 789978. And Beyond Blue has got great resources on its webpage, but they also have a support service, which is 1300 22 4636. 1300 22 4636. So there are free resources that if you're struggling, don't
really need some good professional help.
Get to it earlier, not later. Yeah. Don't let it drag on. You know, I think that if we're struggling, we've got to talk. And I know that
sooner the better.
On Thursday when we got news that Watto was low, is that, you know, we'd been texting, and I know that you'd had a busy day responding to a lot of stuff, and then, you know, just staying close and talking about it, because act earlier rather than later.
Right. Yeah, when you sort of see it first coming.
Yeah.
Peter, look, I hope this has been a help. Our conversation's been a help to me, and I hope this is a help to a lot of guys. Yeah. And let's keep the conversations going, and for Margaret and Hayden and Brendan and Luke and the family, words will never express the gratitude we have that you shared in with so many. Yeah. And that legacy the best thing we can do is to do the best we can to play the part that our Creator wants us to play. Whether you have a deep faith in God or not, we've all learnt some stuff from Ian, and I've got nothing else to say.
Yeah, and I think that just the fact we're having the conversation, and so we wanted to be really intentional, because we know there's blokes right around the country who don't. They're isolated.
Well. Yeah.
They're isolated, and so wanted to just have the conversation like we would do at Shed.
Yeah.
But also allow guys to have some resources. So feel free to share it with anyone. We'll send out a message, and hopefully it'll start circulating around that guys can get it.
Yeah, and let's keep the connection going.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks,
You're
Ben.
welcome.